So today we're currently living in a time of uncertainty. We've all gone through the pandemic and it's created this environment that's caused us to abandon the safety that we once knew. In business, this is the tried and true process, the way things have always been done. Now we have to trust our instincts to create an environment that is now safe, productive, and effective without actually risking the loss of team or culture. Hi, everyone. My name is Hessie Jones, and welcome to Tech Uncensored. Some companies within the technology industry have actually led the way during the pandemic. The first ones to actually adapt to remote work. They had ready infrastructure to easily morph, while the traditional in person organizations actually struggled. So by now, everyone begins to see this new world that's evolving. And what are the expectations from employees now? No longer is anyone expected to go back to the status quo. Today, companies have to be different. They have to think differently. They have to adapt to this new world because we're not going back. So, leadership needs to lead the way in navigating these new expectations and how things change or perhaps not. So, today we're talking about leadership for startup founders. And we welcome Carlos Granda, former Google VP of Customer Success, advisor, and mentor, and someone who frequently talks about the role of leadership in creating a culture that can sustain a crazy or horrific event like the world we lived in the pandemic. So, welcome, Carlos.
Hello, Hesse. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So, let's start. Let's talk about you. Let's talk about your experiences in technology and where even you started and what led you to what you're doing today.
Sure. From an experience perspective, I've been in the technology industry for over 30 years. I started my career as a developer, as an architect, as a project manager, doing a lot of consulting, working with lots of different clients. But then I think we all realized that I wasn't very good at it. So they decided to have me lead. I was probably better at leading teams and running P&Ls. I made a transition to the software business. And so I worked in companies like SAP, Salesforce, and recently at Google Cloud, leading customer success. The Google Cloud experience was probably the one that I think challenged leadership in general. And there was no playbook for a lot of us to go through as we went through the pandemic. Starting at Google and being at Google and building a team at Google through the pandemic it was a very rewarding experience, challenging, but also an experience that I don't think a lot of us that went through the pandemic will never forget.
Okay. So we're talking now about leadership for early stage companies. We actually need to guide and inspire at the early stages of business. And something I've read is that while team and idea are important, poor leadership is a common reason why many startups fail. So, from your perspective, what are the qualities that a leader must have?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to just to give one answer to the question because I think every startup may be at different stages of their own journey. And if you're first getting started and you are a founder that literally is working out of their garage by themselves or with two other people, it's different than when you get to having a team of 15 or having a team of 20. And so I think just as a leader, just in general, and I think it transcends sometimes, different industries. I think you just have to be clear and crisp on sort of your vision, right? You have to be able to have a clear vision. You have to communicate effectively what that vision is. You have to stay focused, but you also have to empower your team and create a culture that gives sort of the team the option, gives them the ability, it gives them the freedom to give ideas and to create innovation. What I've seen is sometimes the founders feel like this is my idea, this is my company, and in many cases don't take sort of the ideas and thoughts from the rest of the team. And so, as a founder, you have to learn to begin to create a culture as your team gets bigger and as you begin to evolve. Is making sure you have a culture that fosters collaboration, fosters innovation, and that sometimes is the toughest thing for the founders because as they evolve, they were the smartest person in the room, and so now they have to start leading the team and inspiring the team, not just telling them what to do.
Okay. So this that kind of leads to the next question about effective leadership. So let's define that. And if is there an actual unique combination of skills and experience for founders to be effective leaders?
Yeah, I think people just the founders I think need to learn to be adaptable and resilient. I think the founders at the very beginning, when you're getting started, you are going to face lots of challenges. They're probably going to hear lots of times the word no, or we cannot fund you, or we don't know who you are. And so they're gonna get their door slammed quite a bit in their face around what they're trying to do. And so I think the skills is they need to be resilient, but they also need to be adaptable. They need to be empathetic with their teams and kind of where they're at. They need to surround themselves with people that maybe bring skills. There are gaps for them. I think, like anybody, we all have blind spots in our lives, and as a leader, that's it's actually a very important piece of it that you need to learn to understand where are your weaknesses and sort of surround yourself with people that can help you fulfill those weaknesses or those blind spots so you can actually lead the team going forward. I think that's just, I think some of those things are just general leadership qualities. But I think for the founders, just being resilient, being scrappy, and never giving up on their dream is something that is a very critical piece.
Okay. So let's turn to the pandemic and how it's, I guess, in many ways upended the way business has evolved in the last couple of years. Um, you talked about the idea of being resilient. And from this perspective, like navigating uncertainty, especially of the kind of magnitude that we've seen, is important. And all of us have been tested all at once. So what kind of expectation or pressure does this put now on the founder?
Um, well, the pandemic, as I mentioned, there was never really a playbook. We all have to figure it out. And as a leader, the experiences that we faced and the pandemic itself, I think it transcended, and I think it didn't matter the title you have, the title you had, how much money you make. It doesn't matter where you live. It didn't matter. The pandemic impacted humanity, and I think that it put us all at a level that we've never been before, where there was always sort of this almost a hierarchical way of looking at the world. But when you were going through the pandemic, everybody was equal because whether you were a CEO of a company or you were, the receptionist, sitting in the front desk, is you experience death, you experience well-being, experience different things that impact you, so it kind of put everybody at the same level. So now that we're in the post-pandemic era, that hopefully we'll never have to experience again, as we're in this post-pandemic era, then there's also no playbook. A lot of leaders are struggling with trying to figure out how to make that connection, and so I think at the end of the day, it's as a founder or as a leader, you got to focus on your employees' well-being. You have to be and lead with empathy. I think it's about being authentic. I feel that when I've been successful of creating a culture where the team is high performing, they're collaborating, they do feel like a team and like a family, is when you lead by example. And I do compare leadership sometimes to being a parent for those who have kids, is that you can't just tell your kids what to do, you got to show them what to do. And when I look at the whether is the good things my two sons do or the two things that drives me crazy are things is because they're mirroring and mimicking a lot of the things that we do, that I do. And so as a leader is the same thing. You can't tell the team just to be nice. You can't just tell the team collaborate with others. You can't tell the team don't work on the weekends when you yourself are responding to emails and sending notes and sending guidance to your team on the weekends. So it's probably the most critical piece of it is to lead with empathy, but also to build a strong culture is you got to lead by example.
Okay, so in this post-pandemic era, and these are some examples that I'm starting to see in my world and in like my kids' world, where they are now expected to go back to work. During the pandemic, there are people who actually left the city and they decided I'm going to move further away because during the pandemic we don't know when we're going to go back, and I can't afford to live in the city. So after the pandemic, companies had said, you know what, we're going to be hybrid for the most part, and those who have moved away, you can work remotely as long as you want. Now we're starting to see a shift, and there are companies, as you know, like Google, Microsoft. Some of them are actually expecting people to come back to work. And there has been studies that have shown that even during the pandemic, productivity hasn't actually slowed down. That issue with trust, where you know that the work is being done and that you don't have to actually walk around to make sure that people are actually doing their work, that's not needed. So how does a leader manage that? About the expectations of, what happens now? Do I need you to be in work at work? What are the trust infractions that may occur because of the decisions that they make?
Ooh, that's a definitely a loaded question too, because I think some industries adapted much quickly to the pandemic, even when we were going through the pandemic. Like I myself, and I don't know if I was one of few, but I myself already did a lot of the hybrids. So either I was traveling or around the world visiting customers, clients, my own team, and then usually one day out of the week, 2 days out of the week, if I was home, I may actually just work from home. And so I had a whole setup for myself to have sort of this virtual world where I can work from home, work at the airport, travel, and things like that. So the only thing that forced was that now I was spending more time doing something that I already do at least one day, 2 days a week. It became the 5 days a week where I was doing. So for me personally, and I know a lot of people went through that too, the transition wasn't as difficult. But now that we're going back, I am seeing different spectrums of people saying, you know what, just let's work hybrid. People can work in a very hybrid, flexible environment and world. And then they'll switch their mind 6 months later and they're like, no, no, no. We need everybody at least 3 days a week because we're paying a lot of real estate for buildings. And so there isn't like the perfect answer because you can actually break it down, especially if you're a large company or a small company, depending on the role, depending on the function you're talking about. There is a lot of productivity that you can have by working from home, but you also can drive a lot of innovation by having people in a room. It's very old school, but having people in a room creates synergies, creates alignment, creates and inspires innovation. So there is definitely, it's hard to just give like one answer that is across the board for everybody because it really depends. People can be productive. And then you can add another dimension to that is you can start thinking about generations. So you'll have executives out there, probably later age in life where they're empty nesters. So for them, it's like, look, we need to lead the organization. We ourselves need to be in the office because we need to drive a culture where everybody's in the office. Then you have the younger people, maybe even my own son's age, kind of in the early 20s to let's say, 30s. They're like, hey, we've been in the pandemic. We were stuck for 3 years almost. We want to get back. So they're excited. They actually want that social connection that even though there's social media, but they still want that connection with people, and at least they want to be able to come into an office. But then you have the middle management, sort of the middle layer of those three generations, kind of 30 up and higher, that might have younger kids. And so now you're dealing with babysitting. You're dealing with carpooling. Now you have doctor's appointments. And you have all these other things that have created this. Well, wait a second. We kind of like this. I don't need to be in the office all the time. I like to work from home because I don't have a sitter, or my wife and myself are trying to balance, our own schedules. And so that in itself creates an interesting dynamic where you have leaders and young people want to be in the office, but the team is actually leading the young people or listening to the leadership team to around how to drive, let's say, you know, financial performance, does not want to be in the office. And so there isn't really the right answer, but we are seeing quite a bit people trying to figure it out, trying to give their employees flexibility. But to your point around what are the measurements that you can create trust, I'm a big believer in culture. I think you gotta um, earn the trust of the teams. The teams need to create and have a culture where they trust each other. I've always said, if you can do your work in an hour, then do it in an hour. If it takes you 10 hours, that's fine. And now, as a leader, the things that we need to worry about is really the outcome and the output that we're getting. We don't need to worry so much about they need to be in the office sitting right next to me doing the work, because then you've not created really the culture that you are earning trust from each other. So I think culture becomes a very critical piece that allows teams to work remotely, collaborate remotely, hold each other accountable, because that's a big thing. It's easy. You have 4 or 5 people working remotely. It's becomes very easy within the team to see who is not pulling their weight, who is not creating or delivering on the things that they were supposed to. So it creates, if you have the right culture, you create that sort of peer-to-peer accountability that becomes very important when it comes to leading the team.
Okay. You mentioned a couple of things there, and I think culture is very important. And I don't know that there are those that are old school, as you talked about the generational differences. And can you inspire, and can you feel like you're part of the team if you are in the office, if you are in one place? But you as a leader still have to inspire to grow a company. And in a time when there are disparate views about, where do I have to hang my hat at the end of the day? Where do I live, in the office or at home, and whether or not management agrees with me, you still have to continue on the current trajectory of the company while you're building this newfound empathy for the team. Like, how do you balance that? And how do you try to manage this evolving culture?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I wish I had the answer, like the perfect answer for everybody. I think the one thing that people always talk about, especially from an employee's perspective, I think people always talk about having work-life balance. And to be honest, I'm not a big believer there's such a thing of a work-life balance, because a balance means that I'm doing 70% of work, 30% of my personal life, or 50% of work, 50% of my life. That's like what a true balance is. I actually think that is we all need to understand and acknowledge that there's no such thing as work-life balance. There's work-life harmony. And I think that's a very different way of looking at the world. It's okay if I'm on vacation and I need to take a call from a customer. My family understands it. My customer understands it. But I also understand it, because I can't just go on my vacation knowing that my customer has a potential issue. And as long as I'm not impacting the time with my family, it's okay to have a call. And so obviously you have to balance it, or you have to have the harmony of the two things kind of living together. But we live in this world where everything is accessible real time. right? It's all on your phone, it's on your tablet, it's on your laptop. You can be booking, an airline ticket or booking a dinner reservation, but at the same time, you're getting an email from a customer that is maybe struggling, or one of your employees needs to take some time off because, from a well-being perspective, there's things that they just need to resolve on their own. So you can't just say, "Well, I'm on vacation. I'm not dealing with that." So as a leader, you need to truly understand that, but you need to make sure that there is that harmony, right? You have to find out what your priorities are, right? No one's going to interrupt my family dinner. No one's going to interrupt me celebrating my son's birthday at a golf course. Like, those things are important, but it doesn't mean that after my golf, I can go and respond to a need of a customer. And I think that's where, if you create such a black and white view of the world where it's like it's work life balance, it's a balance of, no, it's harmony. You have to understand it, you'll have to acknowledge it, that those two things are going to overlap. It's going to happen. But then you need to self-discipline around how do you actually create that harmony, make sure that doesn't interrupt the things that are more important to you, which is your family.
That's it's funny how I look at the world today and I look at the world probably 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I started working, and you never said no. You never said no to a request. You stayed until the work got done. There was just that expectation and the culture because I don't even know that empathy existed back then. I don't even think that was
Mhm.
a word in the business environment. And so now I think we're starting to see a shift where companies see a real risk of losing good employees, or even harming their culture if they don't make significant changes. Um, how do you see the future of work right now, especially with these types of evolving, let's say, employee expectations and being able to now prioritize their well-being, as opposed to their just work in general? How does that change overall, like the landscape and market for employers, um, especially as we start changing our technology, right,
Yeah,
and how we work?
yeah. I think I think, like I said earlier, I think people just need to, and leaders, we need to be um, empathetic. I think in this new world, right? We do. We have to, and because it's not just our team, but it's our clients, our partners. Um, I'm a big in-person sort of leader. Like, if I can fly to a city to meet my team and take them to dinner, listen to them, have we used to call them coffee corners where they would have ask Carlos anything. If I could do that, I would do it. I would go all over the world to do that because that personal connection is hard to replace. I mean, this gets you 80% there, 70% there. There's that 30% of the shaking of the hands of your team and being there present and acknowledging them being there. It's, you can't replace it. Um, but I think, as you said, look, technology gives us that flexibility to be anytime, anywhere. And so just find the time to ensure that you're making connections with people. It doesn't change the fact that you have to be authentic, you know? The pandemic taught us, we used to have this conversation with the teams as we were going through the pandemic. And I said, gosh, the pandemic just created such a personal connection because, if I lost somebody in my family, it doesn't matter the title you had or how many people were under you. It's like you lost a family member, but somebody on the other side of the screen lost a family member as well. And so I think that connection is what made the pandemic, as a leader, to just be more human, right? Just to be human. There's always this thought that leaders are these superheroes. These leaders, do no wrong. They dress correctly all the time. And I think the pandemic brought us a level of humanity as leaders. And so I think, as in sort of in this new world, is I think we just need to be empathetic. I think we need to not just, somebody told me this once and I love it. And being a good listener, it's not just waiting your time to speak. listening is actually being a good listener. It's actually understanding what's coming out of the other side of it, and kind of taking it and acknowledging, and how does that hit us? Because there's always this exercise, is, people tell you what their name is, and then 2 or 3 minutes later, it's like, what was their name again? The reason why is because you're so excited to tell them your name, you're not even listening to what their name is. I think as a leader, we got to learn how to listen. We got to have our pulse around how our people, our teams, our clients, our partners are dealing with things. Sometimes it's not just, you know, they could be having a bad day, but that bad day, or they didn't deliver on something. Well, before you jump on people and get upset at them, just take the time to understand, is everything okay?
Mhm.
Because sometimes it's not. And
Yeah.
we right away, jump away, right away. Say, well, Carlos didn't give us this. He's screwing things up. Well, it could have been that I just found out that my dog passed away.
Mhm.
So there's just little things where we have to just have a better sense of acknowledgement and empathy for what's going on in people's lives.
I had, I think in the last couple of years, my sister is a psychotherapist, and so she's always talked to me about being present, and I never got it because I was always too busy, and I said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," right? And I would be in meetings, let's say you and I were in a Zoom call, and, I'd be typing while I'm talking and not being really present, not really empathizing, and I got caught many times by, not realizing that I had to do something, or I didn't respond, or I had to ask them to repeat whatever they said. And it really affects the way your relationship develops going forward,
Hmm.
because you don't realize that every time you do that, that somebody realizes that their time isn't important, that you haven't put you're there, but you're not really there. And
Hmm.
because we're always so busy, we wanted to get through the meeting and just make sure that we got those 5 points down, then just leave. So I've
Hmm.
made it a point, I think it was post-pandemic, to actually just really be present in every meeting that I am, so that I can actually get what I was supposed to get and more out of that
Yeah,
meeting. So that taught me a lot.
yeah. And the little habits you create, whether you do them at home with your own kids, take them to work. I think those good habits, like for example, for us, it's a simple one. When I'm sitting down and having dinner with my family, there are no phones allowed, not just on the table, but not even in our pockets. Like, it's not allowed on the table. Like, the table is a time to talk and enjoy a meal. And it could be as simple as a cheese sandwich. It doesn't matter. It's a time for us to be together and to talk. And so we've created that as a culture, as a habit. And it's interesting because now, when we go to restaurants, my sons see other families on their phones, like a husband and a wife, or a boyfriend and a girlfriend talking to each other, and have the kids with an iPad right in front of them. And they get frustrated. They're like, I would never let my kids do that. And so it's just become such a habit that they are now fully aware of it. And when they go out with their friends, they started doing things like, hey, let's just leave our phones at home. Or they just leave them in the car. Only one brings a phone for an emergency. Because I keep telling them, I go, you want to be present. Why are you taking a picture of your food and sending it to your cousin in Pittsburgh when you're sitting in Orange County and her of your five closest best friends? Why would you do that? And so when you do the same thing at work, is have that respect. We do have, some specific rules when someone's presenting. It's like, laptops down, take notes, old school, and a piece of paper if you need to. None of this laptops up, none of this with your phones. Like, pay attention. People are there to listen. They prepare content. Let's give them the respect. And again, if I don't do that, I can't just tell people. If I myself don't do that and I'm disrespecting my own speakers up there, then guess what? It's giving everybody else the freedom and the sort of approval that it's okay not to pay attention. And so I think it goes back to the having some good habits, creating some good ways to treat everybody with respect. While at the same time, if you model that behavior, then people will follow.
Thank you. So let's talk about a leader today. He has to not only lead with empathy, but he has to continue to look at the objectives that he has, long term, short term. while navigating now this new uncertainty that seems to be looming in the background, and he has to be ready for that. So it does this idea of crisis preparedness now gain a lot more prominence within an organization so that they can be ready when the sky falls.
Yeah. I was reading this book that talks a bit about sort of how do you lead, and one of the things that really kind of resonated with me, and it's not just for leaders but just as humanity in general, like how to be happy and how do you lead a team, is that there's going to be a lot of emotions and feelings that you can't control. You're going to have a day where you're having a bad day, spill coffee on yourself, brand new suit or brand new dress, whatever. You're having a bad day, or you heard some horrible news from your family. So those are the feelings you're always, or you're seeing the performance of your company or your own stock that is not leading, or you didn't get the funding you want. So you're always going to have these emotions and feelings, which you can't control. That's what makes us human. But how do you respond to that? It's the critical piece of it. And so I always tell people, it's like, don't react, respond. Because the easiest reaction, if somebody cuts you off in the street, there's going to be some four-letter words coming out of your mouth and potentially some not so nice finger pointing at people. What is that going to do? Just gives you the first 10 seconds of pleasure because you were able to vent out. But then later on, you realize that, what, it was an older lady, an older gentleman that didn't pay attention and unfortunately cut you off. They weren't being mean. They didn't wake up that day thinking that they're going to cut someone off. It just happens. So then you feel bad. And so just it's always good to acknowledge. I'm not saying to ignore them. You have to acknowledge them. You're upset, you're angry, you're hungry, you're upset, you're happy, whatever it is, acknowledge it. But then learning how to respond. And so during this time is when, especially the founders, need to sometimes, they're going to get, like I said, rejected by investors. They're going to get potentially rejected by the business. Someone's going to come in and say they have a better idea. You're always going to get challenged. But I think that's where the founders need to have the resilience to respond. And they still need to lead the team. It's okay to acknowledge that you got rejected. Okay, how does that make you feel? Great. Okay, now let's go react. How are we going to respond? Are we going to just quit, throw the towel, or we're going to kind of change our plans, adapt, be scrappy, get feedback? Why did you reject me? What could I do better? And so just having that level of self-awareness,
Mhm.
it's very, very important, not just for the success of your business, but also to the success of the team. The team is looking at leaders. They look at leaders as like being the captain of a ship. When there's something going on or the weather's not going well, they're always looking at the captain. And the captain is the one that has to make sure that everybody tells them, it goes, it's going to be okay. Yeah, it's a huge storm outside, but let's go figure out how do we live rather than sit there and cry or be upset about it. And I think that's where we're in this world where I think leaders need to be scrappy. They need to be resilient. They
Mhm.
need to communicate and they need to inspire.
That's great. Thank you. I'm inspired by that actually. I think the whole thing about not reacting, but responding in a way actually means that you're taking the time to not panic, but be able
Yeah.
to think about logically what to do and understanding that the people who are under you are going to be looking at you for your leadership. So, okay, one
Oh,
last
yeah. How
question.
many times? Yeah, yeah. One more thing on that one. Like, how many times have you received an email from someone that upset you, or somebody sends you an email and you realize that they blind copy your boss
Oh my
or
goodness.
your boss's boss? How many times we've done that? And so, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to respond and throw darts right back at them. And so, the answer is don't do it. That's not the answer either. I'd say write it down. Write that email. Pretend, like, let all your feelings and emotions, let them out. Go for it. Just don't send it. Sleep on it. Wake up the next morning, read the email again, and realize what you're saying, what you wrote back, was it productive? Does it make you feel better, or was it the right thing to do? Or was there anything that you need to clarify? And I would say 99% of the time, you don't send it because you realize your emotion. And that's what happens is the first one would have been a reaction versus the second one is a response where you can go back and say, hey, I saw that email. I didn't appreciate that because was there something I missed? Do you want to have a direct conversation with me? And that's just a better way, more respectful way to deal with sometimes conflict rather than reacting.
Oh my goodness. I think we need to have another episode on conflict. Okay. Okay. So one last question. So you
Yes.
advise a lot of large companies and you mentor founders as well. What are some of the key pieces of advice that you give on leadership that transcends like all these organizations?
Yeah, I think there's three things that at least I try to live by is to always have a clear vision and communicate it effectively to your team. So many times, the team doesn't understand what is our mission. They don't feel connected to the vision, the mission that we're trying to accomplish. And so just have a whatever the vision is, be clear and communicate that to your team regularly. I think sometimes leaders underestimate how smart, how talented, how scrappy, and how dedicated the team is, and they don't like to share sometimes our challenges. And I think it's actually important. It helps them understand when you, as a leader, make a decision. So that's my very first one. I think the second one is you have to create a culture of authenticity. You, as a leader, need to be authentic and you need to lead by example. That alone creates a culture where everybody can be themselves, everybody feels and wants to contribute because they know that their ideas, their thoughts, um, their suggestions are being listened. It's okay to say, I'm not taking every single idea from everybody, but I think we need to create a culture that allows people to be open and free to share ideas, share thoughts around them. And I think lastly, for me, I know sometimes it's touchy feely, but I do believe that if you have a strong culture of a team, I think empowers everybody to be successful. I think if you create a culture where you can be humble, you can be authentic, where you like to collaborate, that you are not there to kill or be killed, is you're actually trying to pull each other up. You're trying to be respectful to everybody's ideas. I think creating a culture that drives that is probably the biggest, I think, key to any leader, no matter the size of the company, is to be successful. If you, as a leader, create a culture where it's a kill or be kill, or I am going to throw the chicken leg in the middle of the table to see who grabs it, sort of style of leadership, that in itself will transcend into the entire culture where there's going to be backstabbing, there's going to be lying and going behind people's back, and it's just which is not a great culture. And so I would say those are the three things: have clear vision and communicate, be authentic and lead by example, and then have a good culture and create whatever those 4 or 5 values that you have. A culture is not let's go and hit our performance and create more profitability. That's not a culture. Culture is how does a team navigate going forward? What are the core values? What's your mission? What's your purpose? And by the way, if you have a great culture, all the financial performance will come. I can guarantee you that.
That's amazing. Okay. On that was an amazing closing note. And thank you so much, Carlos. That's all we have time for today. Before we go, where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So that's the easiest way. You can also find me on Twitter. I think my handle is at Granda Carlos on Twitter or X, whatever it's called nowadays. But usually LinkedIn is where I see it, and it's usually where I'll write blogs and I'll write a post. I recently wrote an article around artificial intelligence as it relates to customer success, and then I'm working on another one right now that I'll be posting hopefully by the end of November. Focus around leadership. Ciao.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you, our audience, for joining us. If you have topics you'd like us to cover, please email us at communications@altitudeaccelerator.ca. And you could also find us at Tech Uncensored, wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, everyone, have fun until next time, and be safe.
Thank you, Hudson.
Thank you.